Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher. We're looking at the Resto Shaman today. We're looking to get everything we want to know about the Resto Shaman. Why? Because, well, we just look awesome. Yeah, we do. We've got more cooldowns that you can shake a stick at this time. And Resto Shaman, classically known as the weakest of the healers when it comes to new expansions. Not a piece of it. Not this time, my friends. Absolutely not this time. We've got more cooldowns than any other healer, and we can use them all to good use. And we are starting to produce some pretty fantastic numbers on the Resto Shaman. Let's take a look, see. And what are we talking about? Okay, so our specialization is obviously healing, Resto Shaman. We get Earth Shield, you've seen it before. Riptide, you've seen it before. The Big Heal, the Greater Healing Wave. And our Spirit Link Totem, the major raid cooldown that we were brought for in Cataclysm because it was so awesome. And quite frankly, we've still got this today, which enables us to keep that raid spot. Keeping that raid spot in our dungeons and our raids and keeping ourselves nice and tidy and producing some awesome healing numbers along with it. So let's talk about talents. The great thing about the Resto Shaman is that the choices are just wide and varied, more so than any of the others, especially when it comes to DPS. There's never anything that is just flat out better. A couple of things that are close to being flat out better, but it's all about choice. It's all about what do you need in this situation? What does this boss want from you? At level 15, we obviously pick up some sort of defensive cooldown. Now, Astral Shift I love, but again, as I said in the Elemental video, I feel that as a caster we have a lot more leeway where we don't need this emergency 40% cooldown. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we're going to be soaking something and we'll need to pick that up, in which case Astral Shift is going to be very cool to us. On the other hand, we get this passive Nature's Guardian. Now, when we're healing, our focus is drawn not only to the raid, but also to the environment around us, and sometimes things happen. Things happen which can really cause us problems. This passive Nature's Guardian, on a 30-second internal cooldown, just saves us should that thing happen that we just didn't notice. We were doing some emergency healing at the time, our attention was drawn elsewhere, and now we've got Nature's Guardian which just protects us and saves us. It's my recommendation, but there's always a shout out for Astral Shift, always. The next two trees are entirely your choice. Entirely your choice. I will say that Totemic Protection is always handy, especially when we're using totems that have very limited range. I just want to hark back a little bit and just remind people that Spirit Link Totem is only a 10-yard range. A 10-yard range. You need to be very picky about where you place totems like this. 10-yard range is absolutely nothing. So to get the benefit of Spirit Link Totem, instead of previously where we could get raid-wide, massive Spirit Links down, we can't really do that unless the whole raid is stacked up now. They need to be really on top of each other. They need to be within 10 yards in order to get the benefit of it. So be aware of that, which projecting your totems elsewhere can be very, very handy. Our next choice is some sort of holy crap button. Our holy crap button. Echo of the Elements is random. As a healer, and a lot of healers don't like randomness. We don't like it. It can be at the wrong time. When we need burst healing, we need it at a certain point. Echo of the Elements is far too random. It can happen at a good time, it can happen at a bad. We don't like randomness. I don't like randomness. Sure, it's a passive, we don't have to worry about it, but it's just not as helpful when we need it. And sometimes we just, if you've ever healed, you know that this time approaches where we need to heal a lot right now, and Echo of the Elements just doesn't fit that mold. Ancestral Swiftness, the classic Nature Swiftness huge heal. Not only that, but it gives us a nice 5% spell haste along with it, which is always handy. I will say for the Resto Shaman though, our haste breakpoints are not very difficult to reach, especially for the early ones. The later ones, of course, get more difficult the further down the line we go. But for the haste breakpoints I'll talk about soon, it's not very hard to reach those. So the passive 5% spell haste is maybe not as useful as we'd like it to be. But of course, if you're a tank healer, again, choice. Depends on your role. Are you the guy assigned to keeping that tank up more so than keeping the raid up? Ancestral Swiftness is going to come in really handy for when you need to macro it in with that greater healing wave and drop a big 200k, 300k heal on top of that tank in an emergency situation. It's on a 1-minute cooldown, which means you can use it a hell of a lot. You're going to get great use out of this instead of waiting forever and ever and having this one big burst heal. You can have it pretty regularly, so it's got its place. However, I seem to feel that Resto Shamans fall into the makeup of being some of the best AoE healers, and in situations where everybody needs a lot of healing, Elemental Mastery for me just comes out on top. 30% haste for 20 seconds is going to give you that benefit of being able to cope with huge, dangerous situations in a much better fashion and push out tons and tons of healing, especially combined with our Mastery. If we're in a situation where the raid needs constant, huge healing for an extended period of time, Elemental Mastery is going to win on that front. You can also combine it with DPS. If we have some sort of boss where we have to burst down this specific thing, or we're going to wipe, healers can go ahead and throw in that Elemental Mastery and fire off a lot more lightning bolts and so forth and help each other out. So a couple of choices there. I would say if you're tank healing, Ancestral Swiftness. If you're AoE healing, Elemental Mastery is going to come in handy. The next choice, again, is a choice on you. It really comes down to me between Conductivity and Healing Tide Totem. Conductivity, when you cast Healing Wave, Greater Healing Wave, or Healing Surge on a target within your healing rain, that healing is going to be passed down, 20% of it is going to be duplicated to people nearby, which is pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. Now, the question you've got to ask yourself with Conductivity is, am I in a big AoE healing situation where I need to keep healing rain down all the time? And it's steady, incoming damage where I can afford to just let a little bit of that healing trickle off to other people. Am I tank healing? But there's still some AoE damage going, so I'm going to keep the tank inside healing rain. And I'm going to be spamming things like Healing Wave, Greater Healing Wave, and Healing Surge on the tank. Therefore, I'm passively helping out the rest of the healers by healing those melee that they're assigned to. Again, a choice to be made. For my 5-man heroics, which I'm going to be running, I love Healing Tide Totem. I tend to run into a lot of players, and I'm sure you guys too, who just don't understand the idea of move the fuck away from things, right? You know what I'm saying? They just have that all the time. And suddenly they'll just be DPSing away and not really giving a damn about my mana or anything like that. And suddenly they start standing in something really, really bad. And without me really realizing it, suddenly the whole party's health starts dropping tremendously. It just starts falling and I'm like, whoa, this is a really bad situation. Time to blow some cooldowns. Healing Tide Totem is a fantastic cooldown for this. It churns out a ton of healing. Let me drop one for you. And you can see, look, 30k healing is going to be passed out. 27k, just chaining every 2 seconds. And it does it to 5 most injured party or raid members within 40 yards. So it's got a huge range on it. And it's going to just keep churning out lots and lots of healing. And it's there. It's a 3-minute cooldown. It's AoE wide. Brilliant for your 5-mans. And really useful in some raid encounters as well. I like it. If you're going to be consistently healing, say, a tank, and there's lots of melee around it taking some massive damage, then Conductivity is going to be coming in much more handy. Again, your choice. At level 90, your choices really come down to Elemental Blast or Unleashed Fury. Elemental Blast is less favoured because the buff it gives you is very random. It can be crit, it can be haste, it can be mastery. And it's got a relatively long cast time that deals damage. And so you're sort of taking away 2 seconds of your time to deal damage, which isn't a heal, to gain a buff that might not be as useful as you need right now. Therefore, I tend to favour Unleashed Fury. Of course, we're unleashing elements. We tend to unleash our elements in time, every unleashed elements to go along with our healing rain, so we get a nice big buffed healing rain. But with Unleashed Fury, we also get the added bonus of that, of further increasing the effectiveness of our next single target heal on the target ally by 50%. So if we look at something like a Greater Healing Wave, that's Healing Wave, there we go. We just start dropping like a 60k Healing Wave, and then we pop out our Unleashed Elements, and then we can just pop in another Healing Wave. You know, we get 100k Greater Healing Wave. There's a lovely difference there because of that. It's just a nice passive extra amount of healing. And pretty much we're going to be dropping Healing Rain a hell of a lot, or we're just going to be generally using Unleash Elements a hell of a lot. Unleash Life, as I should say. In which case we're going to get this extra big bonus. Again, another passive 100k heal compared to the normal Greater Healing Wave, which is going to be 50k. So you can see how much extra benefit we get from that. Absolutely crazy, especially when we start getting some nice crits and stuff rolled into that. So it's all going to be pretty cool. Let's talk about glyphs. Glyphs are one mandatory glyph, the Glyph of Riptide. Glyph of Riptide is awesome because it allows us to keep up our Tidal Waves buffs pretty much all the time. Tidal Waves is a really, really cool buff that increases the haste of our heals. And that is a really, really nice touch to it. And with Riptide being on no cooldown, we could not only hot the entire raid, we could just start throwing Riptides left and right, and Riptide is a super cheap heal at best. We can now do that and hot up a lot of people, and we get a constant permanent buff to our single target heals. Very, very handy again for tank healing, and just overall super handy in any situation. So really pick up this glyph and enjoy it. The other glyph I really like is Glyph of Healing Stream Totem. Healing Stream Totem again is a short cooldown. I'll just drop it for you there. It's on a 30-second cooldown. When your Healing Stream Totem heals an ally, it also reduces their fire, frost, and nature damage taken by 10% for 6 seconds. Healing Stream Totem now becomes a raid cooldown, and I think that's pretty vital. Again, it's situational. They might not be taking any of these sort of elemental damage intakes. That's your choice to make, but I found this super useful in Heroics, and there's several raids where they're going to be taking shadow damage, fire damage, whatever it might be. It doesn't even do shadow. Fire damage, etc., etc. In which case, it's just extra damage reduction needed for those moments. If there's a huge fire wave coming out or anything along those lines, you're going to find your Healing Stream Totem just being really, really helpful in all those situations, as well as healing people. Healing Stream Totem is something we generally want to keep on cooldown because it doesn't cost us a hell of a lot, and it does really nice extra healing on top of everything we're doing. Certainly in a raid environment, we're going to be using this thing on cooldown. The final glyph I picked up is Glyph of Telluric Currents. Restores 2% of your mana when it strikes an enemy when you use your Lightning Bolt. I love this for early dungeons. There are sure some other options you've got here. Increasing your Spirit Walker's Grace is always handy in raids and so on and so forth. And there's also other sorts of other choices you can pick up along the way. It's entirely your choice. The only mandatory one is Riptide, but anything you think is helpful in a certain situation, go ahead and pick up. For my 5-mans, and especially in low gear, I'm going to be picking up Glyph of Telluric Currents. I never want to stop casting. Never. I hate healers who stop casting and just sort of dribble on the shoes while everything's okay. Oh, everyone's healed, everyone's full health. I'll just stand around until some damage comes in. I think that is awful attitude. Absolutely awful, terrible, stupidly bad attitude. Help out your group. Do some fucking damage for Christ's sake. And now with Glyph of Telluric Currents, we also get our mana back. Could also be very handy in situations where we've just healed everybody off. We're down to sort of 80%, half mana, maybe even lower. And now we can just do some lightning bolts instead of standing around trying to regen, just to keep building our mana up and still increasing the pace of the group. I find that super, super helpful. I really do. It's obviously very difficult for me to talk about rotation, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to jump into a 5-man heroic and show you that. But let's talk about the reforging and stuff for now. I always like to make it a little bit harder on myself when I'm healing, just as a confidence booster for you guys. If you see I can do it in a certain situation, then I think you're going to be fine and dandy as well. Earlier I talked about haste breakpoints. What are a haste breakpoint? What the hell is going on with a haste breakpoint, Preacher? Haste breakpoints are ways of looking at your stats to get certain benefits, and after that you focus on some other stats. So, as a Resto Shaman, you tend to find crit being your worst stat, and haste and mastery being the top. Now, some people will just say, hey, you know what? Get as much haste as possible, get as much mastery as possible. That is never correct for a healer. It depends on what you're doing as a healer. It's not uncommon to find Resto Shamans go out and reforge in between certain bosses, especially on progress, just so they can get the right setup for what they're doing. Our mastery, of course, let's bring up the mastery. Let's get our spellbook. Jump to the mastery. Where are we? Mastery Deep Healing, there it is. Increase the potency of your healing spells by up to 64% based on your current health of your target. Lower health targets are healed for more. So you can obviously see here, if we're in a situation where the raid is never full health, mastery just becomes better and better and better. Now we can also say there's an enrage, or there is a phase of this fight where the raid takes extremely heavy damage and we're blowing mad cooldowns, we're trying to keep everybody alive. Deep healing, once again, really, really shines. And that's what you need to be thinking about. If this fight is like that, I want a hell of a lot more mastery. When it comes to your haste, it's not just the fact that your spells cast faster that you're after. It really is not really a case of that. What you're actually after is getting extra ticks on things. Things like Healing Rain, Riptide, and Earth Living Weapon, for example. In your early gear, what I really, really recommend is that you aim for about 12.5% haste. 12.5% haste, okay? Doesn't matter about your stats, just look at your percentage. Remember this, including raid buffs and so on and so forth. Get your 12.5% haste. That's going to give you an extra tick of Earth Living, extra tick of Riptide, and an extra tick of Healing Rain. Past that, you're not really going to see a benefit till about 25 or 30% haste when you start getting extra ticks, which is a long, long way away from 12.5% haste. That's double the amounts of haste. So once you hit your 12.5%, so I would start stacking Mastery as a basic guide. As a really basic guide. You can see I've got, I made it hard on myself with Spirit for Mastery. Getting rid of crit to haste, reaching that 12.5%, and so on and so forth. Done exactly the same thing. Just building my haste up and doing all that. So that's what I'd recommend for you reforging. Obviously, intellect is always good. More healing, more power, all good to you. Gem your intellect, gem as much intellect as you can. Reforge you to your spirit. Now, everyone's going to say you need more spirit. And in the raids, guys, you certainly are. Your priorities should be simple. Intellect, spirit, haste until you soft cap, get your mastery, then put crit down at the bottom. And that includes even more haste. Because more haste is not going to benefit a great deal until you hit the extra 25%. It really isn't. What I will say is for the 5-man, I'm going to jump in now and try and show you some of the spells and how I heal and that kind of stuff, and just give you a sort of confidence booster. I will just show you this gear quickly. I've got spirit gloves. There's no spirit on my belt, no spirit on my pants, no spirit on my boots, none on my ring, none on my second ring, none on my trinket, none on that trinket. I've got a spirit shield, none on that weapon, none on that, none of those braces. I've got a spirit chest, none on the cape, none on the shoulders. I've got a spirit neck and a spirit helm. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 items with spirit on out of all of them. Which, for a new healer going into a dungeon, is like, that is really scary. Don't worry about it. I'm sure we'll cope. I'm sure we'll be just fine. It's not a case that I don't have spirit items. I even picked up some legs in a dungeon that I jumped in. No problem at all. So we're going to jump in there now. Going to give you a little bit of a confidence boost. Going to show you exactly sort of array of cooldowns and all that kind of stuff. You take it easy, ballers, and have a great day.